In this video, we're going to be building out this countries application using the updated version of the REST countries API, which is version 3.1, and we're going to be getting data for 250 countries and displaying it on the screen. And when you click on each one of these cards, then it's going to take you into an inner page which shows just a bit more information about that country with a bigger version of the flag with their official name, and then some bit more data and the borders surrounding that particular country. And then if there are no borders, then obviously there's nothing that is going to show there. So for example, if I click on Iceland, which is not bordered by any country, then we don't get any borders here. And then you can search for a country by its full name or by its partial name. So for example, if I search for New Zealand, then when I submit the form, then we get the country called New Zealand, and then you can click on it and it obviously takes you into the more information pages about that country. And then if you only search for a partial name of the country, then every single country that contains that partial name in its title is going to be returned, as you can see here. And then you can also search for a country by its region. So for example, right now, if I search for Europe, then we should be getting countries that are in Europe or in Asia. Let me see, there we go. So if I search for Asia, then if I click on Asia here on the drop down list, then we should be getting countries that are in Asia. If I click on Americas, then we should be getting countries that are in Americas, and so on and so forth, all the way to Antarctica. And there we go. So that is going to be the application. But one final thing that we're going to be adding is we're going to be adding a dark mode for it. So the dark mode is not going to be on the toggle, but however, it is going to be dependent on your system. So if I switch the color scheme from light mode to dark mode, then we're going to be getting the dark mode version of the application here, as you can see, looking quite nice as well. And then on the inner pages as well, then the dark mode also applies, and we're going to be using Tailwind for this. So the API that we're going to be using is called REST countries. So if you go into restcountries.com, then this is the website for the API, and we're going to be getting all the countries using this endpoint. And then for the internal pages, then we're going to be using this endpoint, which is dependent on the name of the country, which we're going to set up using React Router DOM. And if you visit this endpoint, then you should be getting a page like this, but it's not loading for some reason. Let me switch back to the light mode, because we're going to be building up the light mode first, and then we're going to build up the dark mode after. So this is going to be the endpoint, but it's not loading for some reason. So let me close it. We're going to open it up when we begin building our application. So I'm going to have this page open because we're going to be needing these endpoints for our API, and we're going to need them as a reference. And then what I want to do is I'm going to head over into TailwindCSS.com and have it open as well, because we're going to be installing Tailwind CSS into our application, which we're going to be building using Create React App in the framework guides. So just open this page right here, and then we're going to have it open. And then as we begin, then let me go ahead and let's canvas a new React application by going into our command prompt, into our terminal. And then I'm going to cd into my desktop and into a folder called YT videos. And then I'm going to create a new React application. So I'm going to say npx create React app, and I'm going to call it countries-app-yt. So countries app YT. And then I'm going to let this run. And then once it finishes running, then we are going to continue. Please subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and ring the notification bell so that you're always going to be notified of when I upload a new video. Okay, so once that is finished, then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say code countries app YT, which is going to open up an instance of Visual Studio Code into this folder. And so let this open up, and then the first thing that I want to do is I want to install Tailwind CSS. So I'm going to have this open right here, and we're just going to copy this command, copy, and then we're going to close this and say Ctrl-J to open up our terminal. And by the way, if you don't know the command for your system, then just look at this. So toggle terminal is Ctrl-tilde or Ctrl and J. So just paste this command in, let it run. And then once it runs, then just copy this second one, copy and paste it in as well, which is going to create our Tailwind config file. And then we're going to copy this part here, copy. And then we're going to go into Tailwind config.js, and then we're going to paste it inside here. So paste it in, And then before we save it, we want to add a line here called dark mode, and then we're going to set this into media, and that is what is going to detect whether your system is running the dark mode or the light mode, and then it's going to switch the theme of your application accordingly. So once you add this line, and then once you paste this in, then you can save it. And then let's see what we need to do next. We need to copy these 3 lines and paste them inside our index.css, here. So paste them on top of this and save it. And then let's see, now we can run our server by running npm start. But before we do that, what I want to do is I want to install React Router DOM, which is going to help us with our internal routing. So I'm going to say in npm install react-router-dom, and then let this run. And then as it is running, then we're going to clean up, so remove this, and then we can do with the system font, because the font that I was using in the demo, you have to install it on your system before you can use it, because it is not a default font that comes with your system. But for this project, we're just going to use the default one. It's okay. And then save this, and then let's see, we're going to delete the app CSS, the app test.js, the logo, and this, delete them. And then in the index.js, we're going to remove this because we have deleted this file, and then remove its import as well. Oops, what did I do here? Remove the import, and then save it. And then in the app.js, we're going to remove these 2, remove them. And then for now, we're just going to return an h1 that says hello world, just so that we can see that everything is running correctly, and React.dom should have finished installing. And then I'm just going to run our server by saying npm run start, which is going to run this on localhost 3000. So let me wait for this to open up, and then we can continue. Okay, so once it opens up, then you can see we have hello world on the screen right here. So that means that our application is working correctly. So let's begin the initial setup. And the first thing that I'm going to do is this. I'm going to go inside my index.html, and then I'm going to change this title to say countries up. And then, by the way, I've just remembered that we are also going to be changing this title depending on the country that we click on. And you're going to see how we're going to do that. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's create a components folder. So inside our source folder, let's go ahead and create a new folder that is called components. And then inside components, I want to create a countries.js. Now countries.js is going to be our initial homepage, which is going to show all the countries, all the country data. So let's go ahead and let's say export default function countries. And then inside here, let's just return a fragment that says countries. And then what we're going to do is we're going to render this component into our app.js. So right inside here, we want to render our countries and then import it from components countries, so that now we should see countries instead of hello world. So this is correct, right? And then now let's go ahead and set up React Router DOM, because we want to have our routing. So we're going to say import browser router, and then we're also going to import routes and then import route. And then we can remove this from here, and then let's just say return browser router, which is going to be the parent of the entire application. And then we want to render our routes, which is the parent of the route. And then for each initial route that we're going to have, so we're going to have a route here that is going into the /, which is the home page, because the / is the home page. And inside the /, then we want to render our component that is called countries. So countries, like so, which is going to be our homepage route, so that when I save this, then we should see countries. But if I go into another page that doesn't exist, then we see nothing. And then now that we see nothing here, then we also want to add an error boundary here, which is for every other page that does not exist. Then we're going to be rendering an element called the error page, and we're going to be creating this as well. So let's go ahead and create an error.js. So error.js, and then inside here, I'm just going to say rfc, which is going to create a React function component and export it. And then for now, it's just going to say error, because we are not really like rendering anything here. And then of course, let's remember to import this so that it actually works. Oops, what did I do? Import it from components error, like so. And then now we should see error page. Okay. And then now the next route that we are going to create is the single page route. So when we navigate into every single page, and you know what, let me refrain from doing this now, so that we are going to create this page when we get to that section. So save this, and we're going to have our error page and the home page only. So if I go back, then we're going to go into the home page, which is the countries, and we can begin to work on our countries component. Now the first thing that I want to do is I want to give the body a very slight gray background color instead of this white. So what I'm going to do is right below this, I'm going to use a Tailwind directive called @apply, and I'm going to say apply a BG of gray -50, and this should be grayed out just a bit, like it's barely even visible. And then what I'm going to do is on dark mode, I want a BG of gray -900. So this is how you're going to be adding dark mode classes in Tailwind. So when I switch this into dark mode, then we should see a gray background color, and we see when we switch to light mode, then it is back into the very slight gray. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to go into our countries.js. So we can close this and close this one as well. So inside countries.js, we're going to begin to get our data, and then we're going to style it out for the light mode, and then we're going to style it out for the dark mode as well, and then we're going to go into our internal routing. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to import our two hooks, which are going to help us to fetch our data. So I'm going to say import use state and use effect from React. And then below this, we're going to have this. We're going to set up our state values, which I'm going to call countries, and set countries, and this is going to be equal to use state, and by default it's going to be an empty array because we're going to populate it once we fetch our data. And then below this, we're going to have our use effect to fetch our data. So use effect, and we're going to have this with an empty dependency array so that it only runs once, which is on the initial render. And then once we have that, then we're going to fetch our data. So I'm going to create a function here. So let me call this function get countries, which is going to be an asynchronous function. And then we're going to say const res. I know, let me place in a try catch block. So we're going to say const res. So the response that we get back is going to be await fetch, and then we're going to go into our API to get the endpoint, which is this one. So just copy this and paste it inside here, remove this space, and then the data that we get back, const data, is going to be await res.json, meaning convert it into JSON. And then once we get our data, then we want to say set countries into the data that we get back, which is going to populate this state value, meaning it is no longer going to be an empty array. And then below this, in case there's an error, then we're just going to say console.error, the error that we have. And then below this, let's remember to call our countries function. So get countries, you can call it here. And then here, let's just go ahead and say countries dot-length, and we should see 250 on the screen. 0 first, of course, and then 250 once the data is loaded in. So we can see that our function is working correctly. So let's go ahead and let's begin to structure how we want it to look on the screen. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add an error boundary where I'm going to say if there are no countries, if this is true, then just return an h1 that says loading ... And then once we get our countries, then we're going to be returning a section inside here, and then we're going to be populating this section. Now for now, I just want to style up this h1 because we can't really see it, because like the countries is set to false because we have populated this. But if this is the positive, meaning if countries is true, then show the h1, then we're also always going to see loading on the screen here. So let's style up this loading state, and I'm going to give this a class name of text gray 800, and then font bold, and then uppercase and tracking wide to increase the letter spacing. And then I'm going to say give this a class of flex and items dash center and justify dash center and text center as well, and then h screen to push it all the way to the center, meaning it should be here. There we go. And then let's increase it to text forward cell, and that is our loading state. And then let me make this 900 to make it just a bit darker. So 900 is much better. And then what we're going to do is on dark mode, we're going to change the text to white. Okay, so this is when this is on light mode, and then if I switch it to dark mode, then we should also see loading here. Otherwise, if I remove this class from here, then we're not going to see the text, because the text is always like grayed out by default, you can see, right? Okay, so let's add in that class once again, so text white, and we're going to have that for dark mode. So that's basically what we're going to be doing. And then now we can negate this once again, so that it actually shows our data of 250 countries. And then now let's begin to style this out. And so what I want to do here is I want to map over the countries data, and then for every object that we get back, then we're going to be displaying an article for it. So what we're going to do is this. I'm going to say countries.map, and then for every single country that we get back, we are going to do this. We're going to be returning an article component, which we don't have, so we're going to create it. And then because we are mapping over the state value, then we are returning a list. Then each list needs to have a unique key, and in this case I'm just going to return the country.name.common, and this is coming from the API, by the way. So if you visit the API right here, so just copy this and go to this page, then we should be getting the countries. Oh, I don't have the JSON formatter here. Okay, so let me open up a new page. So JSON formatter is an extension that just formats this to look better. And so there we go. So we have the countries.name.common, meaning we're getting the common name of the country, and that is what we are displaying here on the screen. Let me close this page. And then now what we're going to do is, because we want to be able to access all this other data that we get from the API inside our article component that we're going to get, then we're going to pass in the remaining properties inside this object as a spread operator. So I'm going to pass in my curly brackets and say ... country, which means pass in every other single property that is remaining into the article component as props. And so we can therefore then destructure them as props, and then we can use them in our article component, which we're going to create next. So save this, and this is going to break our application. So we can go ahead and create our article component, article.js. And for now, let's just return a div that says article. And then let's remember to import this on the top. So you can just click here and say Control Spacebar, which is going to give you this drop down, and then just click on this, and it is going to import your article on top. So when you save this, then we are going to see this. So we're going to see article 250 times. Now, just to save on bandwidth, I'm going to do this. I'm going to say set countries into data.slice and slice the first 10 items. So only return 10 articles. Now this is just to save on bandwidth, okay? So that we don't return 250 items. We're only going to be returning 10 items for now. But then once we like build out our application, then we're going to remove this, meaning it's going to return every other single country. So inside our article component, let's begin to destructure this. So I'm going to go into article.js, and then what we want to do is we're going to be structuring it as follows. We're going to have an article, and then inside this article we're going to have our flag on top. So if you take a look at the API, the flag is going to be here. Let me get it. The flag is, come on, where is it? So we have the flags, and then we have the PNG, and then we have the SVG. Now I'm going to be using the SVG version for two reasons. The first reason is because SVG files they load in faster and they're smaller in size. And then the second reason is that SVGs don't pixelate. So whether you zoom in or whether you zoom out, the quality is always going to remain the same. So that's why we're going to be using the SVG version. So what we want to do is we're going to go back into our code editor. So we're going to return an image here, and then the source for this image is going to be the flags.svg, which we have here, the flags.svg, because this is an object. And then now this is not going to work because we need to get this from the props. So we're going to destructure this, and we're going to say get the flags from here. And the reason why you can do this once again is because we are passing in all the other properties as a spread operator, meaning all the other properties that we are getting from the API. So save this, and then save this as well, and we should see something on the screen. Let me see. So we have that. So we're getting the flags of the first 10 items. Remember, once again, I've only set it to 10 items just to save on bandwidth. And then let's do this. We are going to go below this, and then below the flag we're going to return an h2, and the h2 is going to say the name the name dot common, meaning the common name, and then let's destructure the name as well here so that it actually works. And then below this, we're going to have a UL with 3 list items, and the first one is going to say the population, and then the second one is going to say the region, and then the third one is going to say the sub-region. And of course, obviously you can guess it from the API, we're going to be turning the population. Let me just confirm that population is correct here, population. So we're going to say population, and then here we're going to say region, and then here we are going to say sub-region. And then of course, remember to destructure them as props, so population, and then region, and then sub-region. And then save this, and then let's see what we have on the screen. In our application, we should see the name of the country, the population, the region, and the sub-region. And then let's just make this number to look better by going back into our code editor and saying population dot to local string, meaning it's going to add commas or full stop depending on your region so that this number can actually look readable. That is much better. And then now what we need to do obviously is just to style this out so that it looks better. And we're going to do that by doing this. We're going to go inside this h2, give this a class name of font bold, font dash bold, and then we're going to say text dash large and text dash gray dash 900. And then we're going to say margin bottom of 2 to push away from this UL. And then we're going to go inside this UL, give this a class name of flex and flex column, and then items dash center, and then justify dash start, and then give it a gap of about 2 just to separate them out just a bit. And we should have this. Oops, item center is wrong. This should be item start so that it goes all the way here. That's much better. And then let's go ahead and do this now. Let's return a grid so that we can actually see like the countries in terms of grids. And we can do that by going inside the countries.js, and then we're going to style out this section. And let me not place it inside this section, because on top of this I want to have a form which is going to help us to like search for a country by its name and so on and so forth. So I'm going to grab this and place it inside a div like so that now I'm going to go inside this div and give this div a class name of grid, and grid dash columns dash 1 with a gap of about 8. Now on small screens obviously you want 1 grid, but on medium screens, meaning on tablet size screens and above, then I want the grid to be 2, so grid columns 2. And then on large screens, then I want 3 grid columns, so grid columns 3. And then on 2 extra large screens, then I want the grid columns to be 4. You know what, let me maintain it at 3. I think 3 is much better. So now we should see 1 2 3, right? And then now let's limit these flags so that they are actually the same size, because you can see they're not the same sizes, right? So inside the article, we're going to go inside this image and give this image a class name, and we're going to say and we're going to say that on medium screens, then I want the height to be 64 for all the images, so they're all going to have a fixed height. And then we're also going to say give it a width of full on all devices, including small screens, so width of full. And then let's see, we're also going to say object dash cover so that they take up like the full width. There we go. That is much better. And height 64 looks small. Let's say height 72. How is that? Yeah, I think height 72 is okay. And then now what we need to do is, let me add a bit of padding on. Let me see. Let's do this. Let me grab the text from here to here and then add a padding on it. So meaning from this h2 and the ul, I'm going to place it inside the div, and I'm going to give this div a padding of, let me see, padding of 4 all around, meaning just push it inwards a bit like so. And then inside this article, I'm going to give this article a class name of bg white, meaning it's going to be white against the gray background, and it's not really all that visible. So let me increase this background here to 100 of the body so that like it's just a bit more visible. I think that is just a bit more visible, right? Let me see how 200 looks like. 200, let's see. No, let's use 100. Let's use 100. And then let's go inside the articles once again, and then let's give them a rounded border, so rounded large, and then a box shadow of, let me say, shadow large. How does that look? No, let me just say shadow, so a very slight box shadow. That's okay. And then the next thing that we need to do is we are going to go inside the countries, and then inside the div here, should I go in? No, let me go inside the section. So inside the section, I'm going to give this a class name of container, meaning it's going to be limited on some widths. So let me see, limited, there we go. We can see that it is offset to the left, and if I zoom out, then you're going to see that it is actually offset to the left. So I want this to move to the center, and we can do that by just saying mx auto, meaning add an equal margin on the left and right and push it to the center. And then we're going to have this. And then now what we want to do is I want to add a padding on the top, and a padding all around actually. So I'm going to say padding all around of 8, meaning push everything inwards and downwards just a bit. And then you can see that the articles have a rounded border on the bottom, but the flags don't have a rounded border on the top. So we can do that by going into the article here. Let's see here where we have the rounded, and we can add an overflow of hidden, meaning hide the overflows, and then it's going to give this a rounded border as well, because technically the rounded border is on the entire article, right, which is the BG of white, which includes the flag. And so the flag doesn't have a rounded border, that's why it pushes outside to the edges. But when you set the overflow to hidden, then it conforms to the rounded border of the articles. That's why it is rounded on the top as well. And so we're going to have this. So this is looking nice. This is looking nice. I'm not sure whether I should add like a 4th grid here. And by the way, once again, just to mention it, I'm only returning 10 items. That's why we can't see all the rest of the countries. So we're going to have this. Let me test this out. Let me try and add, let me say 2XL, then the grid columns should be 4. Should that work? I think that's okay. I think that's okay. We can work with this. Now let's go ahead and create the dark mode version of this. So let me switch this to dark mode. And so on dark mode, you can see that what we need to do is just change the background color and then the text color. So we are going to do this. We're going to go inside our articles here, and then we are going to go and say that for the dark mode, then I want the BG to be gray-800. Let me see how it looks. So grayed out. And then we're going to say this for the dark mode. When we hover over the cards, then I want the BG to be gray-700. So when I hover over them, then this is going to happen. There we go. And then let's add a transition. So transition-all with a duration of about 200. And then I didn't add the hover effect for light mode screen. So let me go here and say that for hover on light mode, then I want the BG to be gray-200. And so we're going to have this. And then of course we need to change the text. So we're going to go inside the H2 and say that for dark mode, then the text should be white. And then on the UL here, I'm just going to place it on the UL and say that for dark mode, then the text should be gray-400. And we should have that. So it's white here and 400 there. And we have that for the dark mode, just as simple as that. And then now what we need to do is we need to add a link to this, which links to the internal page of the corresponding country. So what we're going to do is this. We're going to grab this entire article, cut it out, and place it inside a link component, and then paste this in. And so this link is going to be linking to a dynamic link. So we're going to place in our curly brackets and then our backticks, and then we're going to say link this into /, and then we're going to say $, and we're going to say name.common, meaning it's going to take the common name of the country, and then we're going to link to it dynamically. So I'm going to save this and just make sure that nothing breaks, but something does break because this is not imported. So import this. There we go. Let's see. So then, now look at this. If you look on the bottom left where the link usually shows, if I hover over one card, then you can see that it shows Iceland first of all. Over the next one it shows Spain, and so on and so forth. So technically our dynamic linking is working. But if I click on one of these cards, then it's going to break our application. Because if you check on F12, it's going to tell you something like a route does not exist or something. Okay, it has embarrassed me, but that's okay. Now the reason why we see nothing here and Actually, oh, you know what, we see an error page. We see an error page because if we check in our app.js, we only have the /route here, and then we're saying that for every other route that does not match, meaning technically this route here, the /Spain, we know that it should match, but the application says it does not match. That's why we have the error page. So we need to add a page for every single country that we're going to be clicking on. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a route here, and the path for this is going to be going to /:name. So meaning go into like the name of the country, and then the element that is going to be showing, we're going to create a single country component. So single country component, and then we're going to close out our route component, and then let's go ahead and create this. So single country, create a new file called single country.js, and then just say RFC like so for now. And then let's remember to import this as well. So import single country here, copy this down, change this into single country. And then now what we should see is we should see single country here. There you go, right? And if I go back and I click on another page, on another country, then we should see single country as well. So that is working correctly. And then now what we need to do is this. We need to go and get the name of the country in the address bar, and then we need to send an API GET request to get the data corresponding to that country and then display it on the screen. In so many words, it sounds difficult, but it's not really. So let's go ahead and do it right away. And we are going to go into the API. Let me check it. It should be this one. So we're going to be getting the country name dependent on the name that is in the address bar. So just copy this link, and then inside the single country, we are going to do this. We're going to import useState and useEffect once again, because we're going to be fetching data from the API. So useState and useEffect. And then below this, we're going to set up our state values. So I'm going to say const country and set country. So singular. This is going to be equal to useState. And we're going to be getting back an array. By the way, if you search for this, if you visit this page, oops. If you visit this, then you're getting back an array here. You can see that we are getting back an array. We're not getting back an object. So that's why I have this as an array as well. And then what we need to do now is we need to set up our useEffect. And then our useEffect is going to have a dependency array of the name. Now the name here is going to be coming from the address bar dependent on whatever country that we've clicked on, meaning we need to access this name that is in the address bar, and we can access that using a hook from ReactJs called useParams. So we're going to import useParams from ReactJs, and then we're going to initialize it, and we're going to say const name. So destructure the name from useParams. And what it's going to do is that it's going to access the address bar and get this name, and then it's going to set it equal to the name that we have destructured inside here, such that now if I display the name, and then let me just change this into text white so that we can see it. So text white. What we're going to do is we're going to be seeing the name of the country here, so Iceland. And if I go into another country, click on this, then we're going to say Iraq, and then another country, we're going to say Malawi, and so on and so forth. So you can see that this is working correctly, right? Now what we need to do is we need to set up our useEffect. So I'm going to set up a try-catch block, and actually I should set up the name of the function first. So I'm going to say const get single country is equal to an asynchronous function, and then we're going to set up our try-catch block, and then inside here we're just going to say console.error, the error that we are going to get in case there is an error. Oh my god, I can't type. Really? Okay, there we go. And then in the try block, we're going to say this const response is equal to await fetch, and we're going to be fetching data from we're going to be fetching data from this, come on, really, from this link right here. But this, remember, this has to be dynamic dependent on the name that we have, right? So we're going to grab this, we're going to change it, and then I'm going to place it inside my $sign like this, and my curly brackets, and say dependent on the name, and then change this into backticks and this into backticks, so that this is now a variable. And so what we're going to do is, what this means is that we're going to be fetching the name of the country dependent on the name that we have in the address bar that we get from use params. And then we're going to say this const data is equal to await res.json, meaning convert it into JSON. And then we are going to say set country, meaning this function set country into the data that we get back, which is going to populate our state value. And then below this, we are going to have this. We're going to remove this. And you know what? It's not even going to be a div. Let's just return a fragment. And then inside here, we're going to have a section. This section is going to have an article. The first article is going to be an image. The source for this image is going to be the, let me see. Actually, what I'm doing this wrong. Actually, we should first map over our country data. So country.map. And then let me call this an item. For every item that we get back, then we're going to return an article. You know what? Let me return a div first of all, which is going to be the parent. And then we're going to have an article inside here. And then we're going to have an image. The image is going to be the item.flags.svg. And then the art attribute, in case the image fails to load, then I just want to say the item.name.common. There we go. And then this needs to have a unique key. So for the key for this is going to be the item. I can just have this to be the name, I think. Is that unique? No, it's not unique. Let me have this to be the item dot population. Population should be unique, right? So item dot population, and then below this article, we're going to have another article, and then we're going to have an h1 that says item dot name dot full name. Let me just confirm. Official. It should be official. There we go, which is the official name of the country. And then you know what, before we go far, let me just save this to confirm that this is all working correctly. I've not called this function, so below this, call this function, so get single country. There we go. Okay, so save this, and then let's see what we have on the screen. Let me change it to light mode first of all, so that it doesn't confuse me when we are styling it out. Where's our application? Here it is. So click on this, and we should see, there we go. So we have the flag, we have the official name of the country. And so let's begin to style this out. Let's just style it out right away. So right inside this div, give this a class name of grid, and grid columns 1 with a gap of 8 to separate it out from this text just a bit. And then we're going to say that for medium screens, then the grid columns should be 2, right? Which is going to place it here. Fantastic. And then for medium screens, I'm going to say place dash items dash center, meaning it's going to bring this text downwards to the center. There we go. And then now let's see, what do we need to do? I want this to move all the way downwards. So I'm going to say that for medium screens, give it a height of screen, meaning it's going to place it to the center. Fantastic. And then let's go inside the section. I'm going to give this a class name of padding all round of 8, meaning on small screens, then it's going to have a slight padding on the left so that it doesn't go all the way to the edges. You can see, right? And then what we're going to do is I'm going to say that for medium screens, I want the padding on the Y to be 0. Now, why do I have it like that? It's because, like, if I have a padding on the Y axis of 8, sorry, by default, let me remove this so that you actually see it, then it's going to introduce a scroll bar here. So I don't want this scroll bar, right? So that's why I'm going to say that for medium screens, remove the padding on the Y axis and reset it to 0. So that we don't have padding on the y-axis and we don't have that scroll bar, but we still have some padding on the x-axis. And then let's add a class of container here, and not container is too big. Let me say max width 7xl, and then mx auto so that it centers it properly. And there we go. So we're going to have that. And then let's see, place item center might be a bad idea because I'm saying this is like, it is too offset to the center. So let me remove this. And it should be here. Oh, wait a minute. Well, that was wrong. So let's just add it back in. And then let's do this. We're going to go inside this h1, give this a class name of font bold and text gray 900, and let's say text dash 4xl for small screens, and then for large screens, let's say text dash 6xl. How big is that? Yeah, that's okay. And then let's do this. This can remain as it is. let's add a bit more information on the bottom of this H1. So we're going to have a UL with family list items 4 or 5, I can't remember. Okay, so we're going to be displaying the population here. We're going to be displaying the region. We're going to be displaying the sub-region. We're also going to display what else? Let me take a look at our API and remember what we need to display. We need to display the currency. I remember the currency. And currency is going to be interesting, by the way, because let me show you. The currency is, where are you? The currencies here is an object, but there are other countries that have more than one currency. So I'm going to show you how we're going to be displaying this on the screen. So we have currencies, and then we also need to get the capital. Yes, the capital. So the capital should probably come first. So the capital of the country. And then let's see, what else do we need to do? The borders. We need to also display the borders. So borders is going to be, because borders is an array on its own. Where is it? This one doesn't have borders. So let me check for one that has borders. So you can see that borders is an array on its own. So what we're going to do is inside here, we're going to be displaying the borders if the borders exist. And if they don't exist, then we're not going to display any borders. So let's have an issue here that says borders so that I actually remember. Okay, so save this, and then we should see something on the screen. We should see this, right? So let's go inside this UL, and then inside here, let's just return item.capital. Wait a minute, is capital an array as well, or what? Capital, where is it? Capital is an array as well. Okay, so if it's an array, then let's return the capital and let's return the first item in the array. And then the population, we're just going to say item.population. And then we're also going to say to local string so that we add commas or full stops depending on the region. And then here we're going to say item.region. And then here we're going to say item.subregion. And then here we're going to say currency. And I'm going to show you currency because if I try to render item.currencies, let me see, how is it? Where's the currencies? Where are the currencies? I know it just dawned on me that I should probably zoom in so that like it's even zooming. Really? And so it's just dawned on me that I should probably zoom in so that this is actually more visible. So you can see that currencies here is an object which contains key values that is here, and then it's also another object. So because we don't, like, not all countries are going to use this currency, for example. So we're going to need to convert this into an array and then display the first item so that we can actually get the name of the currency and then display that name of the currency on the screen. So that's why we can't technically do this. So I'm going to save this, and then on the screen we should have a bunch of data, and we should have this, right? And then let's also display the borders right away before I forget. So inside the borders, we are going to do this. We are going to say, let me see, it should be item.borders.map, and then for every border that we get back, then we want to return a list item with the key of index, and I should probably destructure the index here as well. So index, and then we just want to display the name of the border on the list item. And when I save this, then we should have this. Now this works, right? But let me show you something. If I go back and I click on Iceland, which doesn't have any borders, then nothing is going to show on the screen. And in fact, we're going to have an error in the console that says something cannot read properties undefined of map. That is because there are some countries that don't have any borders. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this UL and this H3, and I'm going to say that only when item.borders exists, that's when I want to render the H3 as well as the UL. And the reason why we have an error is because we are returning an H3 and a UL, which is 2 items from a return statement. And as you know that in JavaScript, we can't return 2 items from a return statement. So we're going to grab this and return a fragment, which is going to be only 1 item. So there we go. So return a fragment with an issue and so that now this doesn't break. And then if I go into a country that has borders, then it shows the borders on that country. So let's tell this out. And I'm going to go inside this UL, and I'm going to give this UL a class name of margin top of 4, and then flex and flex column. Let's see, and then I should say items dash start and justify dash start with a gap of 2 to separate them out. And so we're going to have this, and then let's change this text color. So let me say text slate dash 700. That should change the color for this. There we go. And then we are going to do this. Let me say margin Y. So margin on the top here as well as on the bottom on the borders. And then we're going to say that for dark mode, then I want the text to be gray dash 400. And we're going to see how this is going to work. I mean, obviously you can test it out on your own. And then let's go inside this h3, give this a class name of text gray dash 900 and font dash bold and text dash large and a margin bottom of 2, just to push it away from these borders just a bit. And then we're going to say that for dark mode, then the text should be white, and I should probably do the same on the h1 here and say that for dark mode, then the text should be white. And then let's go inside this UL, going to give this UL a class name of flex and flex wrap, and then items start and justify start with a gap of 2 to separate them out just a bit. There we go. And then you know what, this margin is a bit too small. Let me go inside this h1. Let me give this h1 a margin bottom. Oops, where is it? The h1 here. Let me just add it here and let me say margin bottom of 8, pushed away from this. So increase the margin just a bit. And then let's style out these borders. So let's go inside the borders, inside the list items here, give this a class name of, this is on light mode, right? So bg white on light mode, and then padding all round of 2 with a rounded border. And then let me say text extra small, make it very small. Let me say tracking wide just a bit. Let me see how it looks. Okay, that's looking okay. And then let me add a slight box shadow so that they are elevated just a bit. So shadow here, and it should be elevated just a bit so that they're actually visible. And then on dark mode, what we want to do is change this to bg gray dash 800. And then on dark mode as well, we're going to say change the text into gray dash 400. Okay, and then now let's switch this into dark mode. Wait a minute, I should change this text color as well. So let me go, where is it? Let me just do it here. So let me say text gray dash 700 by default. There we go. Okay, so let's go and switch this into dark mode, and then let's see what we have. Would you look at that? Looking quite nice, doesn't it? Quite nice. And then now the final thing that we need to do is just add a link that goes back to the home page. So right below, let me go below this UL. Let me have, actually no, not below this UL. Let me go outside of this, because we don't want the link to be conditionally rendered depending on whether the country has borders or not, right? So let's go outside of this, which ends, where does it end? Here. And we're going to add a link which is going to link back to the / page, like so. And I'm going to say ampersand left arrow, so LARR, and say back. And we should see back right here. Or link is not defined, so control spacebar, and then just click on this to import it, and we should see back here. And then let's style this out. So I'm going to give this a class name of inline block, so that I can add a margin top of 8 on it. And then this is on light mode. Let me style out the light mode first of all. Let's see what we have. So we have this. So on light mode, what I want to do is I want this to have a bg of white, and then I'm going to say padding y of 2, padding x of 6 with a rounded border with a very slight box shadow with a text gray 700. And then when I hover over it, then I want the bg to be gray dash 200. And then let's add a transition, so transition dash all with a duration of 200. And and then we're going to say that for dark mode, then I want the BG to be gray dash 800, and then for dark mode, when I hover over it, then the BG should be gray dash 700, and then for dark mode, let's change the text to gray dash 400. Okay, so save it, and then let's see what we have on the screen. There we go. So we have our back button, that is the hover effect, and then we can switch to the dark mode. Let's see, dark mode switch. Okay, and that's our button on dark mode, looking quite nice. So we can go back, and we're going to have this that is looking quite nice, looking nice, right? Okay, so now let's do this. Let's go ahead and create our search form on top. So we're going to go into our countries component, and you know what, I am going to forget this, so let me style the error page first. So let's go into / a page that doesn't exist, and let's style the error page here. What is it? You know what, I've just realized that this is not going to work. Do you know why we don't see any error? Like, we don't see the text that says error here, is because in our application here in the app.js, we have set the / name to go into single country. So technically it is showing single country component, and I think we should get an error in the console. Yes, that says country.map is not a function. So technically it's displaying like it's taking this to be the name of a country, but it's not. So the error that we have added here, like, it doesn't actually make sense. So we can remove it. You can remove it, and then you can save this, and then you can delete the error.js here. So just delete. Nothing is going to break on the screen, and then we can just go ahead and we can deal with our what's it called, our form on top. So let's go ahead and create our form. So inside countries.js, so where we add this comment, let's go ahead and create a div. I mean, this div is going to have two forms. So the first form is going to have an input with a type of text, not search, with an ID, with a name that says search, and an ID that says search, with a placeholder text that says search for a country by its name, and then we're going to set it to required so that you can submit the form without filling in the input. And then the second form is going to be a select. So we're going to have a select here, and the name is just going to say filter dash by dash region. The ID is going to say filter by region, and then this is going to have a bit of options inside here that we're going to fill in. So let's save this, and we should have two forms. So 1 and 2 is going to be here. So let's style out these forms. Let me style out the light mode version first of all. So the light mode looks like this, and we are going to style it out. So inside the input, give this a class name of padding y of 2, padding x of 4, and then we're going to change the text into gray-800. Let's change the placeholder text as well. So placeholder dash gray-800. Let's see, what does it look? Okay, and then I've just remembered, let me also add the form to have autocomplete off. So autocomplete equals to off. So we can type in okay, and then let's go inside this input. Let's give this input a width of full, meaning it's going to go all the way to the end. And then let's go inside this form, and let's give this form a class name of max width dash, let's say 4xl, meaning the input is now going to be limited to here. And then let's add a slight box shadow here with a rounded border. Let me see, of course I haven't saved it, so I'm just trying to look what else can I add. Let me change this into 600, and let me change this into 600. How does this look? Yeah, that is much better. Let's move this outline. I don't like that outline, so let's say outline dash none. Okay, so we're going to have this. Fantastic. So that is our input. You know what, let me say padding y of 3, make it just a bit bigger on the y-axis, and then let's tell out this select that it comes here. Now on small screens, by the way, on small screens I want the select to be here, right? So what I'm going to do is this. We are going to go inside this div and give this div a class name of flex, meaning it's going to place it here by default. And then I'm going to say flex column, meaning it's going to go back down. and then I'm going to say give this a gap of about 4 to increase this gap here so that it's just separated out just a bit. And then we're going to say that for medium screens, then the flex should be row, meaning when you increase it past medium, then the select is going to come here. Fantastic. So maximize this, and then we're going to say for medium screens, then items dash center, and then for medium screens, then justify dash between, come on, meaning take it to the end here. So this is our select. And you know what, let me see item center is what makes this not go to the end. So let me remove it from here. Let me see. Okay, that's not it. So let's go ahead and do this. So inside this form, let's say that for medium screens, then the flex should be 1, and then inside this form, give this a class name and say that for medium screens, then the flex should be 1, meaning take up 50-50. There we go. Okay, that is not what I wanted. I want this to come here, meaning I can go inside this select and give this select a class name and say with dash, let me say with dash, how much is 52? 208. Yes, 52 is 208 pixels. There we go. And let me see if I change this to flex 2, what happens? No, that's not what I want to happen. Change this to flex 2, meaning there we go, meaning I think I can remove this from here. Nothing is going to change actually, right? Yeah, that's okay, because this is limited to max width of 4XL, I think. And then let's go inside this div, and then let's give this div a margin bottom of 8 to separate it out from this text. Sorry, from the flags, I mean. Okay, that's looking almost okay. So let's style up this select. So inside the select, we're going to say padding y of 3. I mean, even if you had, and let me say padding x of 4, that is not going to do anything actually. Yeah, that's not going to do anything. And then don't worry, we're going to populate this, and then let's also remove the outline. So outline none. Okay, let's add a shadow here with a rounded border. Let's see, so that this happens, so that it just tells the same way as this input. And then let's see, what do I want to do here? What do I want to do? I actually have to add in some text so that I can actually see it. So let's add in some text here so that we can actually see what we are styling. And in order to do that, then, because this is going to be filtered by regions, we're going to have, I think, 6 regions. So I'm going to create an array of objects here called regions. So const region is equal to an array of objects. The first one, the key is going to be the name. The value is going to be Europe. Okay, and then let me just grab this and copy it downwards. So you can copy it downwards easily by saying Shift Alt and down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then this second one is going to be Asia. This is going to be Africa. This is going to be Oceania. This is going to be Americas. And then this is going to be Antarctic. Antarctic. Yes, there we go. And then now let's go ahead and render out our options. So I'm going to be mapping over the regions array that we have just created. So regions.map. And then for every region that we're going to get, I also want to get the index here, which is going to be our unique key. We're going to be returning an option element. So option, and the option is going to have a key of index. Key equals index, not minus. Key equals index. And then the value is going to be, the value is going to be the region dot name, because that is the how we have structured the array of objects. And then here the text we're just going to say region dot name. So when I save this, then we should have a drop down list that says all of these items. There we go. So that's looking okay, right? But I want this text to be the same color as this. So I used text gray 600 here. So let me go inside the options. Let me see whether I can do it here and say text gray 600. Let me see, does that work? Yes, it does. Okay, fantastic. And then now we just need to have the dark mode version of this. So for the dark mode, we're just going to say text gray dash 400, because I think that is the only thing that is going to change on the dark mode. This is 1x. And then on the input, we're going to say that for dark mode, then text gray 400. For dark mode, then placeholder dash gray dash 400. And then for dark mode, we're going to change the BG into gray dash 800. And then for dark mode, when we focus on the input, then I want the input to have a BG gray of 700. And then let's say transition dash all with a duration of 200. Let's see. So nothing changes here, so that's okay. Let's change it into dark mode and see. So dark. Let's see. So when you focus on it, the input changes, becomes lighter. And then we can type in and we can still see what we type in because it has a text gray of 400. So that's okay. Fantastic. And oh, I haven't changed the background for this. Okay. Let's do that. So here we should say for dark mode, then the BG should be gray dash 800. Let's see. There we go. And then let me also change for the focus. I think I can adjust the focus. So for the dark mode, for the focus, then the BG gray dash 700, just to be consistent with this as well. Yeah, that's looking quite nice. Quite nice. So let's deal with our search input now. So for the search input, we're going to do this. We are going to create a new state value here called search text. So const search text and set search text. This is going to be equal to use state. By default is going to be an empty string, obviously, because we have not typed in anything yet. And then what we're going to do is on the first form, which is this one here, we're going to have an onSubmit event handler, where we're going to say that when we submit it, then we want to trigger an event called handle search country. And so let's go ahead and create this function. So below this, yes, below this use effect, I'm going to create let me call it let's say function handle. I wanted to create an arrow function, but let me just use it. So handle search country, we're going to be accessing the event here, where we're going to say e.prevent default. So prevent the default behavior of submitting the form. This is not an arrow function, not anything. There you go. So e.prevent default, and then we are going to create a function called search country. Now search country is going to be sending a GET request to the API, and the GET request that it's going to be sending is, let me see, should be, oh, I zoomed in on everything. Oh, when I zoomed in on this, then it zoomed in on everything. Okay, so we're going to be searching for the country by the name here. So we're going to be triggering this kind of GET request. So just like the way we did for the single country, then we're going to be using this once again. So just copy this, and then we are going to create this function called search country, which is going to be an asynchronous function. So I'm going to say async function search country. Then we're going to say const res is equal to, and you know, I can even put a try catch block here as well, where we're going to say const res equals to await fetch, and then place in our backticks, and then place in this link, and then change this into $. And then now it's not going to be the name, it's going to be the search text, meaning we're going to be getting the country depending on the text that we type in. And then we're going to say const data is equal to await res.json, and then we're going to say set countries into the data, data with a small d. And then if there's an error, then we're just going to say console.error, the error that we're going to get. And this should work correctly. So technically, this is still the same GET request that we are doing in the single country. Now, the single country here is dependent on the name that we click on. But now here, it is going to be dependent on the text that we type inside the input. So we're going to save this, and then it's going to break because it's still not going to work. Because if I try to type in something, so if I try to type in Kenya, for example, and I submit it, then it breaks. The reason why it breaks is because we are submitting the form, we are triggering the onSubmit event here, but the text is not being populated. So our state value here is not being populated. So what we need to do is we need to go inside the input here. We need to set the input equal to the value of our state value, so search text. And then it needs to have an onChange handler. So when we type inside the input, then we are accessing the synthetic event of E, and we're saying set search text into e.target.value, which is going to populate our state value called search text. And once this is populated, then it's going to also populate this, obviously. And then once we submit the form, then it's going to search for the country that we have typed in. So save this, and then now we are going to try it again, and we are going to see whether it's going to work. So let's search for Kenya, and we should see Kenya. There we go. So you can see that that is working correctly, right? So once again, if you type for New Zealand, just like we did in the intro, then we get New Zealand. But if you search for a partial name, then you're going to get every single country that has that partial name in the title. So just like that. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to handle our filter by region. So let's go ahead and do the same thing. So we're going to do almost the same thing rather. So on the form that has the filter by region, we're going to add an onSubmit handler, and we're going to say this. We're going to create a function called handle filter by region. Okay, so let's go ahead and create this function here. So function, type function handle filter by region. So access the synthetic event of e and say e.prevent default, like so. And then we're going to call a function here called filter by region. Oops, filter by region. So let's go ahead and create this function, and I'm going to create it right below this, where I'm going to call an asynchronous function called async function filter by region. And then filter by region is going to take in a parameter called region, and this region is going to be dependent on the one that we click on here. So either of these, not either, but one of these 6 regions that we have inside here. And so inside here, we're going to say this. We're going to have something similar. So let me just copy this, paste it here. And then now we're going to be going into /region. And then the variable here is now going to be the region here. So change this into region. And then set countries. This can remain the same. And then now let me just confirm. So the region, now this region, in case you're wondering where it's coming from what we like, one of these that we're going to be clicking inside here. And so when I save this, you would think that this is going to work, but it's not going to work. It's not going to work, and you can actually test it out. For example, if I click on Europe, then you can see that nothing happens, right? If I click on Asia, then nothing happens. Now the reason why nothing happens is because that function needs to be bound into this select, so that we're going to say this. We're going to say the value for this select is going to be the regions dot name. Now the regions dot name here is coming from the array that we created. Remember this one? So the regions dot name is going to populate the select that we have inside here, and then on change. So when you change the value, meaning when you click on another like item on the drop down list, then we want to say access the synthetic event of e, and we're going to say let me say, what is it? And we're going to say filter by region dependent on e.target.value, meaning dependent on the item in the drop down list that we've clicked on. So I hope this is going to work. If it doesn't work, then it's going to bring issues. So let's save this, and then let's try it out. So let's click on Europe. Let's see, and you can see that it filters countries that are in Europe. And then, by the way, this is independent on whether we have this set into slice 10 items. You can see that by default we are getting 10 items, right? We are getting 10 items only. But if we're going to be filtering, then it returns all the countries that are there. So we can see that our functionality is working. So Africa is also filtering, Oceania is also filtering, and so on and so forth. That is looking quite nice, quite nice. So let's go ahead and remove the data.slice here. Let's remove it. So now we're going to be getting all 250 countries. And then now I want to leave you the challenge, which is going to be this. If you search for a country that doesn't exist, then your application is going to break. So try to add an error boundary where it's going to show you some kind of error message on the screen if you're going to be searching for a country that doesn't exist. And now let's go ahead and create a GitHub repository for this, and then let me also deploy it Oh, you know what, before I deploy it, I've just remembered that we need to add a redirects file here. So we're going to create a new file called netlify.toml, and then inside here we're going to add a redirects, and we're going to be redirecting from / all other routes into / index.html with a status of 200, so that it doesn't break, so that our application doesn't break when it deployed to Netlify, because we're going to deploy it to Netlify. So let me go ahead and let me close this and then open up my browser, and then let me remove the dark mode now, go back to light mode, and then let's go into GitHub, and then let's also log into Netlify so that I can actually deploy this application, and then we can create a GitHub repository. So create a new repository, and you know what, I'm going to call this repository, let me see, let me call it rest countries YT. Is that available? Yeah, let me say rest countries app YT. Yeah, let me use that, and then it's going to be public. So create repository, and then let's log into Netlify here, and then let's copy this link, and then let's commit this. So Ctrl J to open up your terminal and confirm that you don't have any errors, and then you can shut this down, and then let's say git add all, and then git commit. Oh, you know what, I've remembered something. I mentioned that we wanted to change the document title depending on the country that we click on. So let me just commit this to GitHub, and then as it's deploying, then we're going to do that. So git commit m, and let me say initial commit. Okay, and then let me say git remote add origin, and paste this in, and then git push -u origin main, which is going to push to GitHub, and then log into Netlify. Let's create a new site, so import existing one from GitHub, and it is called rest countries app -yt. So search for that, and then as it is searching, this should push to GitHub. So reload this, and we should see our application. Okay, so there we go. So we have our application on GitHub, and we should deploy this now. So let's just say deploy site, and then let me open up, let's restart the server so that I can show you how you can change the document title dynamically. So inside the source folder and inside the, where is it, inside the single country JS, what we're going to do is we're going to add another use effect below this. So use effect, and inside this use effect, we're going to be accessing the name that we get from the use params, right? So that means that the dependency array here is also going to be the name, meaning we want to change the document title every time that the name changes from use params, and we know that the use params is going to change every single time that we navigate to a different country name or to a different page. So inside here, what we're going to do is just say document.title is equal to, place in your string here and say countries, and then your straight line, I don't know what it's called, and then just place in your variable called name. So it's going to, so the document title is now going to read countries for / or whatever this thing is, the name is eluding me, and then for example Iceland or United States or Kenya or so on and so forth. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to copy this, and then inside our countries component I'm going to paste it. Let me see, now let me just paste it, let me paste it before this, and then now it's not going to have a dependency array, but it's still going to have an empty dependency. And then inside here, we're just going to say countries app, or let me say showing, come on, it's not typing. Okay, let's say showing all countries. There we go. So when you navigate back into our home page, then we're going to, the document title is going to say showing all countries, and then when you navigate into a single country, then it's going to say countries and then the name of that country. So let this start up, and let me confirm whether this has deployed. Let me change the site name here, change site name, let me say TsbSankara, let's say countries -app. And by the way, Obviously, some of you know that this is the challenge from Frontend Mentor, so it's a nice challenge. So let's click on this, and it has deployed already. It has deployed already. Let me see. So we have that, and then just to confirm, let's switch to dark mode to see what we have, to see whether this is actually going to switch. And there we go. So it also switches with the dark mode toggle. Fantastic. Now what we need to do is, actually not, let me just confirm whether the document title works correctly before we can deploy it. You can see that even our filter works correctly. Nice. So once our server starts back up, you can see that now the document title says showing all countries. Now if I click on one country here, then you can see that the title now changes into countries and then the name of the country. If I go back and click on another one, you can see that when I go back, then the document title resets. If I click on this, and so on and so forth. So that is the functionality that I wanted to show you. And then now what we're going to do is just add this deploy. So just stop the server and then say git add all and git commit, and then add this change that says update come on, document title, and say git push. And then the thing about Netlify is that it's just going to trigger a redeploy with the changes that you've made, and then you'll be able to see it once it has published the changes. So we can close this, and then we can wait just a few more seconds, and then we can close this as well, actually, because we are technically done. Close this, close, and then once this deploys, then we should be able to see it. You can see that this is also the dark mode version of Netlify, by the way, if you've never seen it. So Netlify also does the same thing. Like when you're on light mode, then it shows you the light mode version, and when you switch your application to dark mode, then it shows you the dark mode version. So let this deploy. Let me see, where is it? Has it finished deploying? Not yet, so it's still building. Okay, so it has finished, and then now we can visit our application, and you can see that it should update the document title here, and then it loads in our countries data. And then when I click on this, then the document title should also update. And then the reason why we added the netlify.toml file is so that when I reload this on Netlify, then we don't get an error page. If you don't have your Netlify toml file which has the redirects, then this is going to throw an error page if you try to reload it. Okay, so look at that. It's a pretty nice looking application, and it is finally complete with 250 countries with the updated version 3.1 of the REST countries API. And so if you enjoyed the video, then please leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.